I want to share my LMND SAY questions for Q2 of this year, 2024. 3 questions that I'm asking management, and if you think these are worth being asked, I encourage you to go upvote them on the SAY platform. So let's dive into those 3 questions. And so question 1, I'm going to ask about capital raising. If Lemonade stock rose in value, would you ever consider doing a capital raise? And if so, at what share price? Or do you have enough capital that you don't anticipate ever needing to raise again? Please share how you're thinking about these possible scenarios. So I want to ask this question just so we have a better understanding of, hey, if Lemonade goes to $80 a share, is management going to pull the trigger and raise more funds and dilute, but then also have more money in the bank and more ability to grow more aggressively? Or do they really just want to hunker down and think the unit economics are strong enough, or going to become very strong enough, that they're going to be generating enough cash and cash flow that they don't need to dilute the stock in any way? And maybe if they did dilute it, they thought, we don't have the markets available to grow as aggressively as the amount of capital we would dilute would bring us. So just a little bit more understanding of how they're thinking will really help us as investors and really sort of help us anticipate that in the future, rather than being maybe blindsided one way or another by either raising or not raising, that kind of thing. So I think it's an important question, because I think at some point, again, it could be this quarter, could be next quarter, could be next year. At some point, I think the stock's just going to take off. So having this would be really, really helpful. Okay, question 2 is, when will the next Investor Day be? And what do you anticipate its focus to be on? So this was inspired by a tweet by Shy. Sobes UK, he's a Lemonade OG on Twitter. He said, when's the next one? Can you give us some tickets to do a raffle for the community? If we're talking about when's the next Investor Day, which was a great time. And he said, on it. So getting a sense of, hey, when is the next Investor Day going to be, could help us just plan for that, for one thing, and be looking forward to that, but also having, I'm asking, what's the focus going to be? Because, if I had to guess and predict, I would think they would do the Investor Day maybe sometime next year, when car and home are really rolling more aggressively. It's an exciting, transformative year for Lemonade. They anticipate the stock's going to be, has an upward trajectory between now and then, or sometime during 2025. And so that would be maybe an interesting time to have an Investor Day and talk about, in my mind, you talk about how you're planning to aggressively grow, how you're going to aggressively grow in Europe, how you're going to aggressively grow in the United States and fill that out, how you're going to aggressively grow in other parts of the world, how you're going to aggressively grow in Canada, how you're going to grow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, over the world. What's sort of the growth plans, going forward? That's what I would think the next Investor Day should really be about, and I would think 2025 could be sort of pivotal to that. This is me speculating in my own thoughts and musings, but it'd be interesting. I want to ask this just so, one, we can be excited and interested in it, but also, if you hear that jingle, that's my dog running in the background, but also then you can know, then we could kind of, if it is a 2025, they're like, yeah, it's going to be next year, 2025, and we'll probably talk about, growth potential. Well, then we know we're sort of on what I'm thinking about is on the exact same track that management is thinking about. So could be really, really huge, depending on how they answer that. Okay, question 3 is, could you provide quarterly information on the percentage of IFP, in-force premium, and the number of policies for each product? For example, car is 10% of IFP and 3% of policies. This data would help evaluate the success of cross-selling high in-force premium policies such as house and car, home and car. I threw this in because it would be very interesting data if management was to release something like this, because you could really clearly see and track, hey, what is the mix of IFP? How much of IFP is car, and how is that shifting or changing over time? And you'd be pretty easy then to get sort of your average premium per customer within each product line. So could be really, really interesting data if the management got on board with releasing that data. But we'll see what they do. You might be thinking, but what about Chewy? What about car rollout? People have been asking that. What about cross-selling as a whole? I kind of asked it in question 3. Chewy, car, cross-selling. I mean, I didn't ask these specific questions because they've kind of all been asked in the past. Q4 was a Q4 2023 earnings. I asked about the Chewy deal. I'll link this answer down below. We got a pretty vague answer because Chewy is their partner and they didn't want to release really detailed finances about it. So I feel like if you ask it again, you upvote it again, you're going to get a similar kind of answer. I asked about Q4, that same quarter, about car rollout. I got really good answer. I encourage you to, I'll link this here and you can read through this answer. Super good answer from Daniel. It was really awesome. Also, my more recent interview with Daniel from a few months ago, he went into a lot of detail about, hey, we're expecting car, also home, but car to be rate adequate by the end of this year and kind of hold its own premium this year, 2024, that did versus last year, and then end of 2024 and in 2025, then it's sort of he expect their rates to really be adequate and the growth or expansion and growth of car to be more significant in 2025 and beyond, which is kind of a similar answer he gave here, but he goes into more detail discussing that in my interview with him. So you can go ahead and go back and watch that again if you want. And then finally, also in Q4 2023, I asked about very detailed answer about how non-car sales were cross sells, upsells, in Illinois back in 2022, because Illinois was one of the first states that really started bundling, had all the products available. So it's a really sort of a test state to sort of show how the rest of them could follow once they have all products available and at adequate rates. And he gave some very detailed answers in here about how they are progressing, how the cross-selling is happening, and kind of what they're expecting. So again, another great answer back from earlier this year for Q4 of last year that you can check out as well. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, it's in the bag.